Here we are then out in the workshop with Harry the lathe, and we can see I've removed the top off the headstock already by simply undoing these 4 bolts here, and then it just lifts off, revealing this inner works. These are the gear train that I was talking about in the sketch, and these are the positions for the 2 pulleys, which are the 2 belts that want changing, sorry, and they go down into the bottom of there, and you can just make out on the bottom shaft the 2 pulleys there. So this is the ropey wire which I lapped around inside, and then I cut it, and then when I take that away I simply measured that, and it proved to be less than 1 metre, so I ordered 2 meters of that belting, the T-link belting, and I'm going to fit them now on here, hopefully. And again, I'll be using the access point under here to put my hand in under there, such that I can feed the belt round, etc. And we've got the lathe electrically disconnected from the supply, so it's safe to work in this area. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and fish the belt down this back side here, because there's the pulleys down there are quite near up to the wall, so I'm going to have to feed the belt down that way and then try and feed it back up this way, having gone round the pulley at the bottom, and then I can joint the T-link belt together at the top here, having adjusted the length of it to suit. But what I intend to do first, I'm going to support those 2 pulleys in the bottom down there. I'm going to loop a coil of cable or rope around the shaft at the bottom there, and I'll just tie it off round here for now. That will leave me both of these pulley belts to change then. I'm going to, with a Stanley knife or failing that, one of these hacksaw blades, I'm just going to reach down here and cut this belt that we can see here. I'll cut it down on that back flat stretch down there, and we can see already that I've got this white binding wire holding that bottom shaft up. It's just looped around the bottom of that shaft, so the shaft shouldn't go any further down than it is. Hopefully I will cut this belt here, then take it out and measure the length of it alongside the T-link belt and put it back together. So my intention is to try and cut it from there, as I say, but it may be more practical for me to cut it from under there somewhere. Maybe I could get my hand in under there, might be easier, but I will see how I go on and I will let you know. So before I actually cut this belt, I'm actually just trying to get an idea for feel of how much tension there is on that belt, such that I know what sort of tension myself to put back on it, all being well, when it's in play. So I'm just putting my hand down the back there and feeling it, but I think it's going to be a hacksaw job rather than a Stanley knife, because I can't quite get in this space here. So I'm going to try with the hacksaw, I think. I'll let you know how I get on. In deep now, the belt's actually cut, and the way I cut the belt, because I was struggling with both of those devices, was with my tin snips. To put the tin snips over this back edge here and just cut it through. It went through quite easily with these. Very impressed with that. That was a good idea. So I'll just pull the belt out now and see where we're at with it. There it comes. There it is. So I'll lay that out now as a straight and measure my T-link belt to match. See you in a moment. So I've laid the two belts out flat side by side, and the T-link belting has a tendency to arch upwards in this particular instance, the way I've laid it out like that. It's arching upwards, so I've just laid the small pair of pliers across it to hold it down against this piece of board. And that's the length I'm going to go with at the moment, just to see how I go with it and see whether I can get this thing back together. But that's the sort of overhang I'm going for at each end at the moment as a first instance. So I'm going to try it at that and see how I go. I'll let you know. So I've assembled this belt here, and then I've flicked it round so it's inside out of itself effectively, twisted it round, and then as a sanity check I'm just laying this old belt over the top of the circle which I've just made with this T-link belting. So that's the scenario at the moment. I'm just trying this belt over the top of, and it does seem somewhere very near. Maybe this is a link less, but as I showed in the last clip, laid out in a straight edge, it wants to be ever so slightly smaller perhaps, because it's a T-link belt. It will stretch, and these forks here, these tangs here, sorry, will pull hard against the shoulder of each of these holes, so it will tend to stretch a little when it's in play. So as I laid it out, that's how I'm going to try it, and I've just assembled that belt as I displayed it in the straight alongside this when this was straight, and that's where I'm going to try it. So I'll keep you informed how I go. So just to recap then, this is the straight lengths of the two laid out together, and of course I had to open the belt again to get it into the machine, because it's only when it's in the machine that you can form it back into the loop. So from the end of the hold section, the one with the hole in it, to the one with the tang, the anchor point on it, that's the length of this old belt. So I'm going to see how I go with that measurement. I'll go and try and fit it in. It won't be easy. So of course, obviously it's not easy working on your own, so it might be advisable to have a friend with you who can help you at the time, but I'm using this tool here, which I'll show you this tool when I've done this job, hopefully. But as we can see, I've got a bit of red wire down there looped round the pulley just as I want it, and the idea behind that is I'm going to pull the loose end of that wire up into the headstock where I can get hold of it better, and that is a draw wire that's going to pull this T-link belting over and in, because the T-link belting is wanting to turn round in one certain form, if you like, but I need to pull it onto the pulley in the opposite arc to what it naturally wants to fall. So I'm having to pull it up effectively against its natural form of bending on that bottom pulley. And I'm using this bit of red wire with a crimp terminal on the end through this hole here to pull it up, because this belt also needs fitting in a certain direction such that the tangs will always pull against these holes. These tangs will always pull against these holes when it's rotating and the chuck is coming over the top in this sort of fashion. So I'm going to try and pull it up with this tool here, and that's just gripped onto that red cable down in the bottom of there, if you can see it at the moment. So I'll try and pull it up with that, and I'll let you know how I went on. So using this gripper tool, then I did actually manage to get a hold of the red wire and pull it up. And the way this thing works, if you've never seen one of these gripper tools, if you put your fingers on the thing there and push the one with your palm, it actually pushes out a spline down there that can grip hold of things. And so I pushed that down the back, grabbed hold of the red wire with it. As you let it back, it collapses in and grips onto the red wire. And then once I'd pulled it so far up, I could reach in with my long nose pliers here, and I've hauled it out to the top there. But I still need to fish the belt, which is down here, around the pulley and out up here. So I'll let you know how I go on with that. So as we can see now, I've got this end pulled up here, and it's just spearing down there, and it's round the pulley at the bottom, but the other end of this now needs to come up this front access position here, which there is a little more room to fish it up, so I might not do too bad with that one. So I'll have to put my hand inside this hole down here and fish the other end of the belt up this front face here, and grab it when it comes up with my long nose pliers, I believe, because this tool here won't have enough strength or opening facility to grab such a big thick belt. So I'll have to use the long nose pliers, which are here. I'll let you know how I get on. In addition to laying the two belts side by side, I could also measure the length of the belt, the original belt, and measure my new belt to suit. And in my case, it's 74.5 centimeters or thereabouts. That would be the length of my old belt, which, as we can see, was also starting to crack and beginning to look a little bit ragtail. So I'm glad I'm changing this now, rather than risk this belt parting and shearing the thrust bearing that's inside the lathe head. Then I've run the two belts through my hand to get them exactly the same length, laying them side by side. It doesn't look like it has the laid out there, but they actually are the same length, and each one comprises 35 links in the case of this RDG chain for my particular lathe. So I'll try 35 and see how we go. So as we can see from the two belt ends here, the tang tends to spring away from the general lie of the belt. So what I've done, I've taped the two ends together there effectively, such that it closes up and stays in a straight line, as we can see with the red tape on it there, just to make it easier to thread it through into the headstock and up over the top pulleys. As we can see then, we've now put the belt into the head of the lathe, and it's round this top shaft here, which is where the bearings would need dismantling if you had a solid belt. But because this is a long strip that we've made into a round belt, we can just loop it over. So what I did with that, I inserted it through this hole down here, up the back side of this lathe head here. I put it up that side, and then the other end I brought up the front side of it to this side here, which we can see at the front side of the lathe. Then I joined the two halves together, as we can see. But as we can see again, and I mentioned earlier, the belt is now inside out effectively, because these T's here need to be inside the V of the pulleys. So Jaden's come up now, and we're going to try and twist this thing into shape, but I have to twist it at the top and at the bottom at the same time. So Jaden's going to do the top half here, and I'm going to wrestle down there at the bottom end, and I'll be doing that through this hole under here. So we'll have a go at that, and we'll let you know how we get on. So the way I was doing it didn't work. So what we ended up doing, Jaden and myself, we turned the belt that way like that, and then we fed it down the back side of the headstock, and in that formation we threaded it round the bottom of the bottom pulley, so it was all the tangs were facing inwards. And then once we'd set it onto the bottom pulley, I brought the other end up this side of the lathe here, and then we jointed it together the hard way, because it's easier to join together if they're that way, but we had to join it together that way, which is possible, but it's not quite as easy to do. But we could not manage to twist the belt within the headstock of the lathe. So that's the way we did it. We pushed it down like that, looped it round the bottom pulley, and then pulled this end, this side of the length, if you like, up here, and then we joined it together in dead space here, which was a struggle, but we did it. And then we fed it onto the pulley itself. We rotated the chuck and just gradually fed the belt over the edge of the pulley and into the pulley, and I had to use these as a lever to sort of stretch the belt and get it over into the V. And then once it was in the V down here, it kind of rolled itself in with assistance, obviously pushing it in, etc., but it did actually go in. So that's how we did it. Now we're going to try the second belt, so we'll let you know how we get on with that one. So it's round the pulley at the bottom, and now I've got it over the top of this pulley here. I don't know how many times I shall perhaps drop it into the bottom of the lathe and have to bring it up again, but that's the sort of scenario you end up with. And as we can see, it's well short, and they need to click one into the other, taking over two holes. So it's quite short at the moment. So I think what I will have to do, well, what I'm going to try initially, down in the bottom there, I think there might actually be room to get this first belt along the side of the, along the edge of the pulley and between the casting of the lathe. I'm not sure I'll be able to do it with the second one, but what I'm going to try to do with this one is to do that, such that I can, I'll have to pull this, I'll have to take it off of the bottom pulley and then slip it to the side of the bottom pulley and pull it up such that I've got all the length at the top here, such that I can joint it, and then I'll push it back down and feed it round the end of the pulley, because I think in actual fact there might just be room for me to get between the edge of the pulley wall and the casting of the lathe with the thickness of the belt. I didn't think there would be, but I think there might be, to be fair. So I'm going to try that. Let's see how I go. I obviously can't joint it just as it is there. So I'll try to joint it with more length at the top here by slipping it off the end of the pulley at the bottom, and then I can ride it back onto both pulleys, hopefully stretch it and ride it on. Hopefully that would be my thoughts. So let's see how we go with that. I'm in the bottom there now, and the belt is actually above the bottom pulleys, but we can get the belt round the end of the pulley hopefully, so it won't matter the fact that it's not on the pulley at the moment, and that gives us a lot more length up top side here to join our belt. And then hopefully what we'll do, we'll just ride the belt onto the pulleys as we turn the pulleys round. But we do know from the very first instance that we had this thing disconnected from the mains. We unplugged it from the mains, so the lathe is completely dead at the moment. So I'll join these two halves of the belt together now, which should be fairly simple in this form with the amount of play that I've got there. And then hopefully they'll stretch onto the pulleys and we'll see where we're at. I'll get back to you. So there we are then, you can see the first belt is on, and we've now got the second belt coming up. It's gone down the back side of the headstock, under the bottom of the pulley at the bottom, and then it's coming back up on this side of the lathe head. And now we need to join these two pieces together, but as we can see it's really quite tight, so that's going to be really quite awkward this time to get this one done. The first one was a struggle, but we managed. Now we've got less space, so this might be more of a trauma, but we'll see how we go on. We'll let you know. So here we are now then. We've got one of the belts on already, as we can see, and it's down round the bottom pulley there. And what we're having to do is to feed the belt in against its natural curvature, such that all of these T's are on the inside as they need to be. And then we've had to loop it round this shaft, which is the problem, that we would have to replace the bearings, etc. So what we've done, we've looped the bottom side of the belt just under this top pulley effectively, and created the belt as it needs to be. And now we're going to push this belt in its entirety down into the lathe, and then the bottom end here, at the bottom end, this will be fed onto the pulleys, and then this top end will actually be we're going to put this top end here into this area here, and then we're just going to hopefully roll it on like we did with this belt. So let's see how we go with that. So as we can see, we've got a bit further. We've got the belt now connected up round the bottom pulley, and we connected on, did all the jointing at the top here where my fingers are, which is obviously the area we can see here. So we did all the jointing here. We were going to try to put it in this groove here, but unfortunately the belt was such a thickness that it couldn't fit between this casting here and the flange of the pulley. So we threaded it onto the bottom pulley and then pulled it into this space. No, we offered it up to the bottom pulley, and then we pulled everything up to the top, so we had it out here, and jointed it, and then we pushed it back down, looped it round the bottom pulley, and then brought it to here. Now what we're going to do now, we're going to try to rotate the shaft again, and hopefully with the aid of some pliers, etc., wind this belt onto this bit here, and then across into the second pulley. That's the way we're going to try to do it. So we'll be putting pliers down here, or a file or something to stretch this belt out and ease it over the side of the flange of the pulley. So we'll let you know how we get on with that, but that's what we had to do. We made the belt up in the correct form, with it again pulled up against the bottom side of this top pulley effectively, and then pushed it down into the headstock, looped it round the bottom pulley and off to this side. So now we're on the pulley nearest the chuck with this. I'm not sure if you can see that. So that's the pulley nearest the chuck. It's not very clear down there, to be fair. But this belt here is actually on this pulley at the bottom. So now we need to work this side of the belt here across one into the second pulley. So we'll let you know when we've struggled with that. Okay, bye for now. Well, it really is very confusing, this belting, and very frustrating, to be fair. We've actually got the two on now, as you can see, which is absolutely wonderful, but for the fact that we've ended up with what I had with the old belt, and that's that we've got a twist in it. If you can look down there, if you can see what's going on down there, there's actually a twist in the second belt that we've got on. So we need to take it off again now, perhaps, straighten out that twist, and then try to put it back together. But it's on really, but we've just got a twist in it. And of course, when you're putting this belting on, you've got to make sure you feed the right end up in the right front or back side of this lathe, because you've got to have these tangs the right way around, such that they're always, the T is always pulling into the slot in the direction that the article is going to be turning when it's finished. So that's the correct orientation of those, but we've just got a twist in this belt now, so we'll have to try and sort that out. But other than that, the job's done. Fantastic. We had it done, we thought, and then we saw the twist. Oh dear. So we're going to struggle on a bit further. We'll let you know how we go on. So here we are. We're still begging about with the belt. It's quite some time later now, and as you can see, this belt is now back to where we had it previously, and it's rebuilt again in the correct form now. But what we had to do, we had a small child chisel type thing, and very gently I put that down there kind of thing, and twist and prevented the belt from half twisting back in as it should do, because it was always half twisting itself back in the correct way when it got to here. So what we did, we kind of jammed it in its twisted fashion and managed to get the twist up to the top here, by which time the T's were sticking out looking at us, and then we could use the pliers, etc. Not those pliers, the other pliers, the blue pliers. We got them somewhere, the little pointed ones, and we dismantled the belt. Yes, thank you, Jaden. Jaden's pointed them out to me out of my view. There they are. So what we did then, we pulled the tangs up and dismantled the belt from where it was on this pulley, and we offered it back down again, just under this top pulley effectively, and there, and rebuilt it. And now we're going to feed this onto the bottom pulley again, and then try to get this walked across again over this one and into that pulley without actually getting the half twist in it again. So let's see how we go on with that. It's very difficult and very confusing, and of course you've got to remember to fetch the belt up the right way, such that when it's built, the T's are all pulling against the shoulders of the hole. So Jaden set the phone up now, so hopefully you can see what's going on, and we're just trying to turn these belts and hopefully get it across without the half twist in it. But it's certainly not easy. the pulleys are so close together, there's not really much length of belt between the two, so everything's very much tight and close. But there we go, that's going over now. If we're not careful, we'll get the half twist in it. Catching up on that now. And I'm also catching up on this knot which I put in on this cable, so I'll remove this cable which I put in there to hopefully hold up the lower shaft if anything went wrong. Because we've got one belt on, we don't need this now, so this is surplus and just causing an issue at the moment. I'll just get some snips and then we'll cut that. So here we are, we've got some snips. We'll just snip the cable and pull it out, because it was only ever temporary, just to hold the lower shaft in place rather than it going anywhere. But now we're back to where we were before. We still need to get the belt on, so the belt's coming up now, and hopefully we won't get the half twist. But it's just sliding off at the moment. We'll try that. So Jaden's just gently pulling the chuck round whilst I'm trying to wrestle this across and feed it on. It's a pig in a poke.
Look, see that the twist is coming again.
Hopefully it won't work its way on. No, it's just gone a half twist again. So as you can see, we've got the half twist up here now. So at least we can take the belt apart and try once more. But I think what we need is a cup of tea. So we're going to break for a cup of tea and we're going to come back and see how we go. But in any event, let's just get that belt apart for you so you can see how I'm actually taking it apart. And Jaden's just pointed out the long nose pliers again. So what we need to do now is turn this 90 degrees and that will pop out. Then we need to turn the second one through 90 degrees. And then the belt will come apart. But it's very soul destroying when you get it in and then all of a sudden you get the half twist just kicks in. It's not an easy job to do at all. But anyway, we'll have a cup of tea and perhaps wash our hands and we'll come back. Right, so we're going to try again before going for a cup of tea. So what we need to do now, we need to get the tangs onto the inside. So we take the first T and push it through the hole there and through the second hole, and then turn the belt 90 degrees such that it's all in line. Then we need to get the long nose pliers and this then wants turning through 90 degrees to go through that second hole. So that's coming up through the second hole, so we pull that as tight as we can. Okay, and then that kind of springs into position. You heard it click there, it kind of it springs into position if you get it going the right way. if you're trying to twist it the wrong way, it's difficult to do, but if you're twisting it the right way, then it will actually click in. So Jaden's just popping the belt over on the bottom pulley now.
Where are we at?
So that's round the bottom pulley now. So all we need to do now is to twist it back and get this belt across into that V without any twists. Ah, third or fourth attempt. And of course we're trying not to damage the belt, but the more times we mess about with it, the more damage will be on the belt. So if I can push it far enough across now.
Starting to twist. Oh yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. You see down there? It's catching on something. It must be catching on something.
Catching on this lever here.
Yeah. Still.
But then it engages gear if we move that. There, we think it's on. We think we've got it. By hook or by crook, we can't really explain how we did it, but we've got it on. It's just trial and error actually forcing it across, and Jaden had his hand down this front side here, pushing the belt on, because it was actually catching on this lever, this piece of steel that we can see there. The tangs of the belt were catching on that piece of steel down there, and that piece of steel is actually this lever here. So Jaden was having to push the belt across with his fingers to stop the tangs clashing with this piece of steel, this round steel we can see just there. So he was having to push it across. As I pushed it over this way, across that way, as it came up, Jaden was then pushing it again that way, but on this side here. And as we just turned it and turned it, it worked itself on correctly. And as we can see now, it seems spot on. Not sure if you can make that out, but there's no twist in the belt down there now. Both belts are coming up nicely parallel. And as I said, they've got the same number of links in each belt, so the tension's the same on both. And that's ready for going back into service now. But what we also need to do, last time when I put the lathe back together after changing that variable pulley down there, I thought I had got the forks down there sorted out correctly and fastened onto this shaft here. But it turned out that I didn't, because when I came to take the top off to do this particular task that we've just been doing with these two belts, I noticed this was coming up, and it came up eventually and left the forks behind, and I thought the forks were strapped onto it with a grub screw on a flat, but it didn't seem that was the case, and I thought it was. So I'm going to try and pull that out again and put a flat on it ready for the grub screw, and do with this what I thought it had already, to be fair. So Jaden's holding the forks down in the bottom there with the long nose pliers, such that it doesn't fall out of its orientation with the shaft hole that we've moved. We've taken the shaft out now, and it's here, laid across the bedway where it shouldn't be, but that's where I put it. So I thought the grub screw was riding up and down in that little flat there where we can see the grub screw mark. I thought it was in there and tightened into there when I put it back together, and I thought as I was pulling this shaft up and down, the grub screw was actually catching on the lower and upper side of that flat, and so it was tight, but it didn't seem that it was in eventuality, because when I tried to lift the handle up to remove the head over there, this shaft came up and left the forks behind, unfortunately. So Jaden's hanging on to those forks now, ready for this shaft to go back in the same orientation. I'm just going to file across this flat here that we can see, such that it's a little more defined, and then we'll pop it back in and hopefully tighten the grub screw up onto the mark where it was before at one time. That must be the original mark, because I obviously didn't tighten it down onto the mark as I should have, and that's why we're in this predicament now, where the forks are not rotating as the shaft rotates. But I'm glad that I araldited in this woodruff key there that we can see still in. It does seem to have moved somewhat, but it's still in there. But yeah, that's the araldited in woodruff key that I made out of a half washer. So I'm just going to put a bit more filing on this flat face here, such that we can tighten the grub screw onto it and have a bigger shoulder for it to ride against, top and bottom of the shaft effectively. So hopefully now, I hope you can see I've just been running a file across this flat face which is on this circular rod, and so hopefully now I've created a larger shoulder at this end and a larger shoulder at that end, such that when I tighten the grub screw into the flat, it can bang against each of the shoulders at the top and the bottom, such that I will know when the grub screw is on that flat, which is what I want to do. I don't want the grub screw to be on the circular part and me not know about it. I want it to be in that flat. And also what I've done, I've removed the woodruff key that I made earlier from the part washer, and in fact I still got the part washer kicking about here, look. Must tidy up at some point. But yeah, I've removed it because it had obviously changed its angle slightly, so I'm going to clean that up with paraffin along with this rod again, and I'm going to re-glue it in. So that's the woodruff key araldited back in again, and what I will do again on the top and bottom faces, I'll just refile it such that it matches up with the circular circumference of this height here, such that it will lead itself into the forks more readily, just like I did before. So I've just been using the needle file and just put on it the cones again on either end of this woodruff key, just so that it doesn't catch in the sliding slot within the forks. And I've tried to file this down so that it's flat. I think that was what was fooling me previously, a slight burr on the end of there that was perhaps catching on the forks, and I thought the grub screw was riding up and down in the slot that's on the other side, the flat that we filed earlier. So now we're going to try and put this thing back in and we'll see how we go. So we think we've got the forks assembled correctly now on this actuator shaft here, and we've put the lid back on, and then we can put the lever on that will alter the speed. We've now plugged the lathe in down the back there, and we're just about to give it a switch on. So we're both standing back, we're both well equipped with glasses, and let's see what happens.
Did you turn it on? Oh, you didn't.
No, I didn't. Like Jaden says, it'll help if I turn it on there. There we go. Right, we'll try turning it on again now. Here we go. Hey, look at that. Look at that. So that's good. I think we can call that a success for tonight anyway. It's been a bit of a trial and error job with those two belts. So if we turn this handle in, it will lock it in place, so it will remain at that speed now. And I'll get back to you with regard to the spindle speeds that we're obtaining again. So I'm just in the process of trying to check the speeds that I can obtain from the lathe, and I'm just using back gear, and I'm asking for advice really, because with the lid on, if I've got the steel lid on the top of here, I can get to the pin here that we need to pull out and push in, etc., to engage or disengage back gear, because it's at the top here. But once I've pulled it out, which has engaged back gear, when I want to push it back in to engage normal speed again, what I find is that I've got to hold this. If I turn the belts, I can turn the hole there that we're looking at to the top, and when it's at the top, I can see it now, and I can align this bolt through that hole there and push the bolt home into this ring here. But if I don't have the if I do have the lid on here, I can't arrest the this inner wheel and arrange it such that this hole is at the top, such that the pin here would go through into the hole. So I'm just wondering how other people actually do that without having to remove this top off the headstock every time, just to swap from back gear to normal speed. And talking of the speeds, whilst it's been in back gear, the belts are squealing quite loudly, to be fair. I think it would be these belts, because it didn't make any noise before I changed the belts when I had it in back gear. And the way I've been checking the speed is I've got a reflective strip here. Some of you may have noticed this little dot here, and this is a reflective strip which I've stuck onto this chuck, and I'm actually using a digital tachometer, model DT2234C, digital photo tachometer, and there it is. And it comes with its handy little case, its little pouch there, so you can take it out of the box and have it somewhere in the workshop handy. And if you aim this, if we press the test button on it, it emits a red light, and each time can see that now shining. Each time that white dot passes that red light, it will count, because it will reflect into this meter somehow, and it will count the revolutions of that chuck. So that's how I'm measuring the speed of rotation for the revs per minute. And also, while we're still in the headstock here, maybe a viewer could send in a comment about this oil here. What type of oil I should actually be using with that, and whether I should expect to put oil in there to the point where it seems to weep out somewhere. I'm not really sure. But if somebody could give me the type of oil that I need to put into this shaft through this oiler here, that would be great. Thank you very much. So the lathe's now running at in the slowest in normal gear, and I'll just test the tachometer to see what we're doing. And we're doing 677 revs. 677 revs. So I'll turn the speed up now. So we're now going at about the fastest it will go in normal gear. And that's 1515 revs. One 1,523 revs. So if anybody could tell me whether that's sort of a good speed that they would be likely to get on their highest setting, that would be good, thanks. Some notes on this wet and dry paper. In back gear, the slowest I obtained was 114 revs per minute. And the highest speed in back gear was 180 revs. So if anybody could let me know whether they're good speeds and whether that's sort of the speeds that they get off their lathe, that would be good. Thank you very much. So just to recap then, if anybody could let me know in the comments just how to get the best out of changing this back gear arrangement, because I can access this now with the lid on. But once I've pulled that pin out and the chuck has turned, the alignment of the two holes is then lost. But how do you get the alignment back without first undoing this nut, this bolt here, and this adjuster here, and removing all of this, and then undoing the 4 bolts and removing the headstock, just so you can get inside there and hold the shaft and align the 2 holes so that you can then see once you've got the top off. If somebody could just let me know whether there's a quick and easy way of actually sorting that out without dismantling all the top of this lathe, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Cheers, bye for now. So for those who might be interested in this tachometer, it comes in its case, and in the case there are some sticky back reflective strips, and you cut those and just stick them onto the item that's rotating, and then this thing supposedly measures the revs per minute. And that's what I've been using to assess the revs per minute of my lathe.